Have you ever read something, maybe a poem, written over 100 years ago that just hit so hard it feels like it could have been posted online this morning? Well, today we're diving into exactly that.
I mean, listen to that line. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. It's become this powerful shorthand, right? It feels like it could be a viral tweet perfectly capturing our own turbulent times, but it's not. It's from 1919. So where in the world did this haunting phrase actually come from?
That's the big question, isn't it? So, let's get into it. We're going to uncover why the work of this Irish poet, William Butler Yeats, feels so incredibly prophetic. And we'll see how his unique vision of history can actually give us a powerful new lens to look at our own chaotic world.
Okay, so to really get the poem, you first have to understand the poet. And Yeats, well, he wasn't just writing about the news of the day. He truly believed he was tapping into a much larger, almost mystical pattern of how history works.
I mean, the man was a titan of 20th century literature, no question. He won a Nobel Prize, he co-founded Ireland's National Theatre, the list goes on. But forget the resume for a second. His most radical idea, and this is the key to everything we're talking about, was his theory about how history itself moves.
He called these cycles gyres. Now, you have to put yourself in his shoes. After World War I, that old Victorian idea of history as a straight line, always getting better and better, that was completely shattered. Yeats offered this wild alternative. History isn't a line, it's a series of interlocking spirals, or cones. An age starts with order, it spirals outward into chaos, and then bam, it's replaced by a new opposing spiral. This concept is absolutely crucial. And here's a great way to picture it. You start with unity, right? Everything's stable. Then, the cycle, the gyre, starts to widen. Things get looser, less connected, and that leads directly to chaos. That's the breaking point. And then, out of that total collapse, something new is born, often in a pretty violent way. It's this exact pattern, order, collapse, rebirth, that fueled his most famous poem.
So, with that in mind, let's turn to the poem itself. He wrote it in 1919, in the shadow of World War I and the Irish War of Independence. This is Yeats literally watching his own world, his own gyre, flying apart, and he's trying to capture that feeling in words.
The poem kicks off with this incredible image. A falcon, this highly trained bird, is circling wider and wider, so far out that it can't hear its master calling it back. It's just the perfect metaphor for a world spinning out of control, a society that's lost its connection to its own center.
And of course, you know this isn't really about a bird. That falcon, that's us. It's humanity, cut off from all the things that are supposed to guide us: reason, faith, tradition, you name it. The falconer, that center of authority, is yelling, but nobody's listening anymore. And from that image of just disconnection, Yeats plunges us straight into violence. He paints this picture of a blood-dimmed tide washing over everything. And it's not just physical violence he's talking about. It's this deep moral decay, where the very idea of innocence is just gone, drowned. And this is where it gets really chilling. This is the poem's terrifying climax. After all this chaos, what comes next? Yeats gives us this dark, twisted version of the Second Coming. It's not a savior coming to fix everything. No, it's some monstrous, rough beast slouching towards Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christ of all places, to kick off a terrifying new age.
Now here's the thing. While the poem was born out of a European crisis, its themes of collapse and painful rebirth, well, they weren't just about the West. They hit a nerve in other parts of the world that were dealing with their own massive upheavals.
Take the Indian context, for example. These abstract ideas from Yeats suddenly find a powerful, real-world echo. The gyre, his idea of historical cycles, it really mirrors the Hindu philosophy of the yugas. And that line, the center cannot hold, it stops being a metaphor. It becomes a gut-wrenching, accurate description of the trauma of the partition of India in 1947, when a literal, blood-dimmed tide of violence was tragically unleashed.
Okay, but all this brings up a really central and kind of controversial question about Yeats himself. When the world is on fire, what is the artist's job? Should they be right there in the thick of it, or should they be observing from a distance?
See, Yeats made a very specific choice. He chose this path of, well, philosophical detachment. He believed the poet's job was to see the bigger picture, these deep cyclical patterns of history, not to just get caught up in the noise. And that put him in direct opposition to the trench poets like Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon, who argued, no, a poet has a moral duty to bear witness to the horror.
So you've got these two fundamentally different philosophies on what poetry is even for. For Yeats, it was about preserving art's independence, taking that long view. For Owen and Sassoon, it was about revealing the brutal, immediate truths of suffering and holding power accountable. It's a debate between distance and engagement that honestly is still very much alive today.
So let's pull this conversation right into our own moment, because this isn't just some dusty old literary argument. This question, should an artist be a witness or a visionary? It challenges us now more than ever, in our own turbulent age.
And get this is a poem generated by an AI, but it's directly inspired by Yeats. Suddenly, the falcon is the human, lost in the noise of the streaming feed. The falconer is the algorithm that can't hear us. And that rough beast? It becomes a rough future, literally being coded into existence as we speak. It's just a stunning example of how Yeats's framework is still so relevant for our own anxieties about technology.
So we'll leave you with this thought. In our own world of endless scrolling, climate change, and political fractures, that feeling that the center cannot hold is, well, it's everywhere. And this brings us right back to that core debate. Is the job of art to give us a detached framework, like Yeats's gyre, to help us see the long patterns in the chaos? Or is its job to be an urgent ethical witness, like the trench poets, forcing us to face the immediate human cost? In other words, do you observe the widening gyre from a distance, or do you shout a warning before things completely fall apart? A century later, Yeats's question feels more urgent than ever, and now it's our turn to answer it.